5:58 local time, Caribbean Sea. The surface search radar completes another sweep. One contact appears. Low profile, small radar signature, no AIS signal, no registered transponder code. Range 24 nautical miles. Course north-northwest. Speed 18 knots. In this corridor, normal traffic does not move without identification anymore. Inside the information center aboard USS Gravely, the track is flagged immediately. Unidentified surface contact. No nearby fishing group. No declared cargo route. No match in the commercial registry. At 6:01, the vessel increases throttle. Speed climbs to 22 knots. No change in course, only acceleration. The radar operator leans in. Contact Sierra 21. Speed increasing. The tactical action officer responds at once. Log it. At 06:02, the vessel reaches 24 knots. That is not drift. That is a choice. The bridge confirms a visual check of the horizon. Nothing yet. Still too far out. But the data is already telling the story. At 6:03, USS Gravely shifts 5 degrees to port. A small adjustment. Measured, deliberate. No alarms, no shipwide announcement. Condition 3. Steel moves quietly underfoot. Watertight integrity is set. Key stations are manned. On the forward deck, the 5-inch gun mount turns just enough to be noticed from a distance. Not aimed, not locked, just visible. At 6:04, the range drops to 20 nautical miles. The unidentified vessel accelerates again, now making 28 knots. It is moving hard. This Caribbean route is well known for fast boats blending in as fishing traffic, engines tuned for short bursts, hulls strengthened for heavy loads. Crews trained to trust speed. But 28 knots without identification in open transit lanes creates a very specific profile. At 6:05, the officer of the deck sends the first hail. Unidentified vessel operating without identification beacon. This is a United States Navy vessel conducting lawful operations in international waters. State your intent. Silence. The radio speaker answers with nothing but atmospheric hiss. At 6:06, a second hail goes out. Same message, this time in Spanish. Still nothing. Inside CIC, a new calculation appears. Closest point of approach, 5.4 nautical miles. Time to CPA, 11 minutes. The vessel is not turning away. It is holding its bearing. Recommend classification as suspect smuggling profile, the surface warfare coordinator says evenly. The captain steps into CIC. No raised voice, no rush in his tone. Maintain rules of engagement, he says. Record everything. At 6:07, Gravely's electronic support systems begin logging emissions. Still no outgoing radar spike from the unknown vessel, no sign of targeting behavior. But the engine signature remains steady, stronger than expected for a craft of that size. At 6:08, long-range optics come online. Through the heat shimmer on the horizon, a shape begins to resolve. White hull. No visible nameplate, no flag. The deck looks clean, too clean. No nets, no lines, no sign of fishing equipment. Only 3 figures near the stern. At 6:09, speed holds at 28 knots. Range now 15 nautical miles. CPA 3.2 and shrinking. The decision is made. Prepare RHIB teams. Below deck, the boarding crews move with practiced precision. Coast Guard Law Enforcement Detachment 401 has been embarked for weeks. This is their sector. The rigid hull inflatable boats are readied. Gear remains secured but ready. Body cameras are activated. Evidence kits are staged. At 6:10, the suspect vessel does something unexpected. Throttle drops. Speed falls from 28 knots to 19. No evasive turn, no scatter move, just a controlled reduction in speed. CIC updates the track. Contact decreasing speed. At 6:11, it slows again. 14 knots, then 9. Still no answer to repeated hails. No signal of surrender, just idling engines and a wake fading behind it. That is when the tension sharpens. Smugglers usually run unless they believe they can talk their way clear or unless they know there is no path out. Range, 11 nautical miles. Visual confirmation is now solid. Paint is chipped in places, but there is no wear pattern consistent with a boat working daily fishing runs. The captain gives the order, launch boarding teams. At 6:12, the RHIBs hit the water. Engines come alive instantly. They cut across the calm surface with surgical precision. On the bridge, no one celebrates. No one assumes cooperation. Because when a vessel runs dark, accelerates hard, ignores repeated hails, and then suddenly stops without explanation, it is not clarity. It is uncertainty. And at sea, uncertainty is where mistakes begin. The RHIBs close the distance fast. Above them, the Caribbean sky stays clear. But inside CIC, every system is tracking. Every second is being logged. Because if this turns the wrong way, it will happen fast. And the United States Navy does not rely on guesswork. It confirms 6:12 local time. The RHIBs are in the water. Twin outboards thunder as they break away from USS Gravely, carving clean lines through calm Caribbean swells. 2 boats, 8 personnel, Coast Guard Law Enforcement Detachment, 401 riding low and fast. No sirens, no drama, just speed and purpose. Range to suspect vessel, 4.8 nautical miles. The closing speed is shrinking fast. Inside Gravely's Combat Information Center, the intercept unfolds in real time. The surface radar now shows 3 distinct returns, the suspect vessel and the 2 approaching RHIBs. The unidentified boat holds at 6 knots, drifting, not running. That changes the picture. At 6:13, overhead support checks in, Poseidon on station. A U.S. Navy P-8 patrol aircraft, already operating in the sector, adjusts its orbit. Its multi-mode radar sweeps wide, while electro-optical sensors tighten in. Thermal imagery streams down to Gravely. The deck appears cool. Midship holds a concentrated heat signature, consistent with an active engine space. But the cargo area reads heavier than expected for a small fishing craft. The boarding officer in the lead RHIB hears the update over encrypted comms. Thermal anomaly consistent with dense mass midship. Possible concealed cargo. Still no response from the suspect vessel, no radio traffic. 3 men remain visible on deck, hands at their sides. 2 motionless. At 0614, the range closes to 1.2 nautical miles. Boarding team, this is Gravely. You are cleared to proceed. ROE remains standard interdiction protocol. Copy. Proceeding. The RHIBs separate slightly in a textbook approach. One moves toward the port quarter. The other angles to starboard. Cross coverage, no blind spots. Gear remains secured, but ready. At 300 yards, the boarding officer rises and raises a loud hailer. Vessel ahead, this is a United States Coast Guard boarding team. Prepare to be boarded. Maintain your position. No visible reaction, no sudden movement. No one rushes below deck. That stands out too. At 6:15, grappling hooks bite. Ladder up, first man climbs, then another. Boots strike steel deck, no resistance. The 3 crew members comply immediately, hands visible, no weapons observed. The boarding team fans out with precision. 2 secure personnel, 2 move to the engine space. 1 documents everything. Body cameras are rolling, engine compartment clear, bridge clear, but the vessel smells wrong. Not fish, not fuel alone, plastic tape, salt water trying to cover something else. At 6:16, the tarp near midship is examined. It is an improvised cover, sealed with layers of duct tape and heavy plastic wrap. The boarding officer kneels and cuts through the outer layer. Underneath are tightly packed square bundles, uniform in size, vacuum sealed, wrapped in burlap, each marked. He opens one. Inside is a compressed white brick. A field test kit comes out. Sample taken, reagent applied, blue reaction. Positive for illegal narcotics. He does not raise his voice. Confirmed contraband on board. The report reaches Gravely's bridge. Positive narcotics. Multiple bales. Estimated high-value shipment. Inside CIC, there is no celebration. Only documentation. Time logged. 6:17. The count begins. 19 bundles are visible almost immediately. Each weighs roughly 45 pounds. About 860 pounds total. The intelligence liaison transmits an estimated street value, $83 million. The 3 detainees remain silent. No protest, no explanation. One stares at the deck, the other 2 look straight ahead. At 6:19, the detainees are restrained and seated. The search continues. Hidden compartments are checked. Hull spaces are inspected. No secondary cargo, no weapons, only the cargo itself, telling the whole story. This was not a fishing run, it was transport. Pure movement. At 6:20, chain of custody protocol begins. Every bale is photographed, marked, weighed, and logged down to the ounce. Evidence bags are labeled with time, GPS coordinates, and boarding officer identification. Because stopping the vessel is only half the mission, building the case demands precision. At 6:21, the RHIB teams report secure status. Vessel compliant. Cargo confirmed. No injuries, no resistance. On Gravely, the captain listens, then gives a single nod. Recover teams. Above them, the P-8 remains in orbit, scanning the horizon for additional contacts. Shipments like this rarely move alone, but the radar picture stays clear. Calm sea, clear sky. no new returns. The suspect vessel is no longer just a contact. It is now evidence. Its engine is cut. Its wake has vanished. The RHIBs begin towing it slowly toward the destroyer. Sunlight flashes across 19 sealed bales stacked under guard. $83 million in narcotics intercepted without a single shot. And the morning is still unfolding. 6:24 local time. The RHIBs come back alongside USS Gravely. The suspect vessel follows behind on tow. Engines silent. Wake gone. On the destroyer's main deck, a temporary processing lane is already in place. No chaos, no shouting, just procedure. The detainees come aboard first. 3 adult males around their mid-30s, no visible injuries, no weapons recovered. They are searched again, pockets emptied, hands secured, photographed under controlled lighting. Every detail is recorded. Clothing, tattoos, wrist abrasions, salt patterns on their boots. Because maritime interdiction does not end with a seizure. That is where the real process begins. At 6:27, the first bale is brought aboard. 2 sailors handle it carefully and place it on a non-slip mat beneath a mounted camera rig. Weight confirmed, 44.8 pounds. Second bale, 45.2. The count continues with the same cold precision. Third, 44.9. Total confirmed weight, 860 pounds. Each bundle is wrapped in 3 layers. Burlap on the outside, a compressed plastic layer beneath it, and an inner vacuum seal. Fully water resistant, built to survive weeks at sea without damage. Stamped on the exterior is a green S insignia. Cartel branding. Intelligence analysts have seen the mark before. It points to a distribution corridor tied to northern South America. The usual route leads toward the Gulf region before the shipment moves inland. Estimated street value, $83 million. But the number itself is not the most important part. What that number fuels is weapons purchases, bribes, extortion networks, territorial conflicts. At 6:31, chain of custody procedures move into phase 2. Every bale receives a barcode tag. Photographs are taken from 4 angles, a timestamp is embedded, GPS coordinates logged, international waters, Caribbean transit corridor. Body camera footage is cross-referenced with deck camera recordings. There is no margin for procedural mistakes. If a tag is misapplied or a weight goes unverified, a defense attorney months later could unravel the entire case. Here, discipline matters more than adrenaline. Below deck, the detainees are escorted to a secured holding space. Not a brig, but a temporary compartment under armed supervision. There is no interrogation. That is outside the Navy's role. The detainees remain silent, no statements. One stares down at the floor. Another watches the bulkhead clock. The third closes his eyes. They understand what 860 pounds represents. At 6:35, a secure satellite call links Gravely with regional command. Contraband confirmed. 19 bales, 860 pounds. Estimated value, $83 million. A brief pause follows. Copy. Initiate Federal Transfer Protocol. The next phase begins with coordination. The Drug Enforcement Administration. Coast Guard jurisdictional transfer. Likely processing in Puerto Rico. All handled within established maritime law. Forward interdiction only works if the case holds up in court. At 6:39, the suspect vessel undergoes a final search. Hull integrity checked for hidden bulkheads, engine housing inspected, fuel levels measured. No additional compartments, no concealed weapons, just a stripped-down transport platform. Fast hull, heavy load, minimal crew, built for a single run. At 6:42, the boarding officer files the preliminary report. Time of first radar contact, 5:58. Acceleration logged, 6:02. No response to hails, 6:05. Boarding secured, 6:15. Contraband confirmed, 6:16. From detection to seizure, 18 minutes. No gunfire, no pursuit, no injuries. That level of efficiency is not coincidence, it is doctrine. On the flight deck, the sun climbs higher. The Caribbean remains calm. Commercial ships move along distant horizons, unaware of what just unfolded. But somewhere inland, a chain reaction has already started. A financier expecting delivery, a distributor waiting on a shipment, a schedule that is now broken. Because trafficking operations are not a single boat, they are networks. And when a shipment disappears, the network feels it. At 6:45, the final bale is secured in reinforced storage. The evidence locker is sealed, access restricted. 2 officers sign the log. The detainees remain under constant monitoring, vitals normal. No resistance, no panic, just silence. On the bridge, USS Gravely resumes its patrol heading. Speed steady, course unchanged. The destroyer does not linger, it does not posture. because this was never about spectacle. It was about interception. 860 pounds, $83 million, removed from circulation before reaching land. In the ledger of maritime security, the entry is now recorded, logged, verified, complete. But the corridor remains active and the radar keeps sweeping. 6:52 local time. USS Gravely is back on patrol heading. Speed steady, sea state calm. On radar, the Caribbean looks empty, but it isn't. Because a shipment like this rarely moves alone. Inside the ship's secure communications room, the intelligence packet is already expanding. The green S stamp is transmitted to Southern Command databases. Pattern matching begins. Previous seizures, similar packaging, similar route geometry, Northern South America departure points, midnight coastal launches followed by a dawn sprint through the corridor. This operation was not improvised, it was logistics. At 7:01, analysts confirm a match with 3 earlier interdictions over the past 8 months, all within a 200 nautical mile radius. Each involved similar packaging density, and each moved through the same maritime choke point sailors call the funnel. The funnel compresses northbound traffic into a predictable pattern. Cartel networks build their odds on volume and probability, launch enough hulls, and eventually one gets through. But those odds change when the radar picture never sleeps. Campaign Martillo has operated on that principle since 2012. Forward interdiction. Stop the shipment at sea. Break the distribution chain before it reaches land. Strip confidence from the corridor itself. At 7:06, fuel analysis from the seized vessel is completed. The numbers suggest an endurance window of roughly 36 hours. That points to staging, likely an offshore transfer from a larger vessel or a coastal refuel before departure. This was not the beginning of the route. It was the middle of a larger chain, which means that somewhere farther south, someone already knows the cargo has vanished. Cartel systems run on trust. Trust in delivery, trust in timing, trust in silence. Remove one shipment worth $83 million and silence starts turning into suspicion. At 7:12, USS Gravely receives aerial confirmation. Negative additional contacts in sector. Corridor clear. But clear does not mean inactive, it means watching. The destroyer's Spy 1D radar continues its full 360-degree sweep. Everything is tracked, everything is logged. Small craft, fast movers, drifting returns. The Caribbean is not just open water, it is data. Every wake line is studied, every shift in speed is recorded. At 7:18, a Triton unmanned system updates the maritime grid. Wide area surveillance confirms no clustering of small, fast boats within 40 nautical miles. If this shipment had escort traffic or decoys, they have already scattered. That suggests confidence. The smugglers expected this run to work. When the hails came, they did not bolt. They slowed. That is not panic. That is calculation. Sometimes surrender reduces exposure. Sometimes compliance protects people higher up the chain. Either way, the risk equation changed the moment Gravely altered course. At 7:24, the detainees are checked again. Vitals remain stable. No signs of withdrawal. No attempts at coded communication. Phones confiscated earlier show no outgoing transmissions during the intercept window. This was a sealed operation. Compartmentalized, controlled. Standard cartel tradecraft. Limit traceability, limit exposure. At 7:29, the intelligence officer briefs the captain. Loss of shipment likely impacts regional distribution chain for at least 2 weeks. Possible retaliatory reroute attempts. The captain gives a single nod. Maintain corridor presence. Because interdiction is never about one seizure alone, it is about sustained pressure. Drug trafficking works like an economic system. Disrupt supply at sea, raise the risk profile, increase operating costs, and force traffickers into smaller loads, shorter routes, and higher exposure. Every adjustment makes them easier to find. At 7:35, the evidence locker temperature is checked again. Humidity remains controlled. Integrity seal confirmed. Every bale is still logged and secured. $83 million in illegal narcotics are no longer moving north. But even that number fails to capture the full impact. Street value does not measure the violence tied to distribution. It does not measure territorial disputes, downstream damage, or the chain of coercion that follows the product inland. One shipment can feed multiple networks, remove it early, and the damage farther down the line begins to shrink. At 7:42, USS Gravely adjusts speed and slides back into its established patrol pattern. No media event, no ceremony on deck, just another entry in the operational log. Time of interdiction, coordinates, cargo weight, detainee count, clean execution. Somewhere ashore, a financier checks a ledger, shipment overdue. No signal, no confirmation, Inside cartel networks, delay creates distrust, and distrust can fracture an operation faster than any missile ever could. USS Gravely did not fire a weapon that morning. It did not have to. It disrupted a chain, changed an equation, shifted probability. The Caribbean corridor is still active, but today it is lighter by 860 pounds. And somewhere beyond the horizon, another crew is watching its own radar, recalculating risk. Because now they know the funnel is not empty. It is being watched. And when a destroyer fixes on your track, probability collapses fast. 8:03 local time. The Caribbean is calm again. No sirens, no flashing lights, just a guided missile destroyer carving a steady wake through open water. Below deck, the evidence locker is sealed. 19 bales, 860 pounds, $83 million removed from circulation before reaching land. The detainees sit in controlled silence under armed watch. No statements, no resistance. Only the low hum of ventilation and the distant pulse of engines. On the bridge of USS Gravely, nothing changes on the surface. Course steady, speed constant, radar sweeping. Because interdiction does not end with the seizure. It resets the board. At 8:11, secure communications confirm transfer coordination. Destination set. Federal jurisdiction processing point established. Chain of custody documents transmitted digitally and backed up physically. Every timestamp verified. Every body camera feed archived. This is where movies usually get it wrong. There is no victory lap, no dramatic celebration, only documentation. Because cases do not fall apart from lack of courage. They fall apart on technical mistakes. The weight of 860 pounds has now shifted from the seat to the courtroom, and that transition has to be flawless. At 8:18, aerial overwatch leaves the sector. The P-8 returns to a broader patrol pattern. The corridor looks empty, but intelligence never assumes empty. It assumes adaptation. Cartel networks do not stop after one loss. They adjust. Shorter routes, smaller loads, different timing. But every adjustment adds friction, and friction reveals movement. At 8:24, the operations officer briefs the crew over internal comms. Seizure complete. 0 injuries, mission ongoing, no exaggeration, just facts. Hundreds of miles to the south, someone is already recalculating. $83 million does not disappear quietly. Losses of that scale fracture trust inside criminal networks. Investors start demanding answers. Distributors miss their timelines. At the street level, shortages begin to appear within weeks, supply chains tighten. And in trafficking economics, instability creates vulnerability. Forward interdiction works because it targets logistics, not just transportation. Stop the shipment offshore, and the chain is disrupted before it can spread inland. At 8:31, USS Gravely passes a commercial container ship heading east. Routine traffic, AIS active. Flag clearly visible, predictable, lawful. The contrast is obvious. This is what normal maritime movement looks like. Transparent, traceable, cooperative. The earlier vessel chose to operate in the dark, and operating in the dark narrows your options. At 8:38, the detainees are offered water. Medical checks are completed. Vitals remain steady. Professional treatment, because enforcement does not require hostility. It requires control. No shots were fired that morning. The 5-inch gun never discharged. No warning rounds, no missiles, just radar, speed, timing, and a decision made at the right moment. At 8:45, the sun climbs higher. Gravely's wake stretches long and white across the blue water. From a distance, it looks like any other patrol, but the absence of chaos is the result of precision. 860 pounds, $83 million. 18 minutes from first detection to confirmed seizure. 0 collateral damage, 0 escalation, 0 guesswork. That is the difference between reaction and readiness. At 0852, the Combat Information Center logs one final line in the morning report. Shipment interdicted prior to U.S. territorial entry. That detail matters. Cargo stopped at sea never reaches neighborhoods, never reaches street corners, never finances the next shipment. Every bale removed is not just contraband taken, it is harm prevented. At 900 hours, USS Gravely resumes its normal patrol rotation. Radar continues sweeping. Infrared sensors remain calibrated. Boarding teams restage their equipment, preparing for the next call. Because corridors like this never truly close. They remain active, and so does the watch. Somewhere tonight, another crew will debate their odds. Whether to run dark, whether to push 28 knots across open water, whether probability is on their side. But probability changes when a destroyer alters course, when unanswered hails trigger action, when RHIB engines hit the water. The Caribbean may look calm, but calm does not mean unguarded. $83 million vanished before sunrise. Not with noise, not with spectacle, with discipline. And somewhere beyond the horizon, another radar sweep is already beginning. Because in these waters, silence in the wake does not mean the mission is over. It means the next contact is coming, and someone will be watching.